the Esperanza 243. You are here to watch and or listen to me read a book out loud. It is a personal book, actually, called Aquatica. This is part 8. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Finally getting in another video. Oh my gosh, I'm actually doing it. Finally on a set schedule for this. So cool. And I'm probably going to be repeating this since the video might be up already. But I do have a link where you can vote for what book you want to hear on my radio show. Pretty much done with the audiobook samples. There will be a link. There's actually another. There will be a link for the voting, but there is a separate video where I explain everything. Anyways, you're tuning in because this is part 8 of Aquatica, and I've actually done my math. There will be fewer videos than expected. Oh my gosh. To me that's kind of frightening because I know how much you guys love to see more videos. But I've done my calculations. I'm not altering. Alright, we're just going to do a quick little recap of part 7, and then I'm going to get to the reading. So I believe in part 7, Garnette got to talk to Marion. Yes, got to talk to Marion. This conversation, I kind of wanted to make it have that little, I wanted to have it, how do I explain this? I wanted this conversation to be a little realistic, but at the same time, you know, clearly she's a mermaid, so I have to have that kind of information in there. But you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, I have to make sure that she's as normal as possible, even though she's a mermaid. Whatever normal is, really. Sorry for all you people who don't like the word normal. And then after that, she went to do her stakeout in that cave that she found above ground, which is near the lighthouse, actually. And then she has a conversation with a merman who happens to be the king's advisor and confidant. Wow, what a big step for Garnette. So, and she asks him for help, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool, and a good thing too, because then he can find out how much history he can pull up for her, you know, because she wants proof that she's related to a mer family and not just her mom, who happens to be the same descendant of her blood, you know. And then she's supposed to be meeting with her cousin, and they actually meet at the Virginia beach, of course. And I believe that's it. So let's get to the reading, shall we? Did you bring anything else? Marion pulled out a bucket. I brought this to make a sandcastle. She paused and looked at Garnette. Her cousin had this eager look, like she had a brilliant idea. But it looks like you know a good use for it. Do you want it? Oh, would I? That would help out with what I'm doing tonight. It doesn't have to do with those men, does it? Marion's eyes grew wide as Garnette nodded. It does, Mary. I'm going to take some of those things out when they're gone. The 2 boxes should be empty by the time the night is over. That's what you're doing? Garnette shushed her, looking above the rocky terrain. People will think you're not alone. She glanced around and then towards the sun. Uh-oh. She looked at Marion. What time is it? She looked at her wrist. It's a little after 1. What's going on? I'm meeting someone at 2. She glanced around. Garnette stepped down a couple of rocks and then stood, leaving their towel on the rocks. Come on, I want to show you something. Her cousin hesitated. Come on, it's not going to take long. She dived into the ocean, and her legs changed to a tail. She continued beckoning Marion to come in. Finally, she took her swim cover and watch off, stood, and dived into the ocean. Marion stuck her head out. Oh, wow. It's not as cold as it was 2 days ago. It's possible I warmed it. They laughed. Want to see why it's so cool being a mermaid? Her cousin nodded. She stuck her hand out. Hold on. Marion grabbed her hand. Now hold your breath and just watch. The next thing she knew, she and Garnette went underwater. She swam her best against the current. Marion glanced around, admiring the blue-green waters. They could see seaweed, coral reef, and anemones, and all kinds of fish. It was beautiful. 2 different schools of fish passed them by. It's so beautiful, Garnette said. Her cousin nodded. Marion tapped on her shoulder. What? She pointed to the surface. Oh, right. They swam to the open air. I don't get it, Marion said after they surfaced. I was actually breathing underwater. Garnette shrugged. Maybe it's because you were holding my hand. Who knows? She shrugged and then smiled. I can see why you wouldn't want to leave. There's so much beauty. Garnette nodded. That's why I want to figure out my mom's family history. Since she's not adopted, it's possible someone else in the family was a mermaid or merman. They glanced around before she cleared her throat. We need to go back. I want to make sure there's enough time to call Aunt Kaylee before the merman arrives. You mean you're meeting the guy that you talked to yesterday? Garnette nodded. Be careful, Nettie. I'm sure there are suspicious characters underwater. Besides the octopus and sharks, of course. She giggled. Come on. She held out her hand again. I don't want to be late. Marion grabbed her hand once again as she sighed. They then dove underwater and swam back to the rocky edge of the beach. She climbed up the rocks and dried herself off and put her swim cover and watch back on. I'll see you tomorrow? I don't know. It depends on what happens during my meeting with Mr. Ewell, the merman. Her cousin nodded. I'm going to tell him everything. Marion gasped. No, you can't. What if he ends up shackling you or something? He wouldn't do that, she said, shaking her head. When I talked to him today, he told me someone is interested in meeting me. I think it might have to do with one of my ancestors. I'll call you later on to tell you what happened, okay? Her cousin sighed. All right, I'll talk to you later. She picked up the towel. Wait, could you leave the towel? I might want to get out before the sun sets. She became confused. Before sunset? It seems that if I'm out of the water but it's after sunset, instant tail. Her cousin's eyes widened with fascination. She thought for a minute and put the towel down. Thanks. What time is it? She looked at her watch. It's 15 minutes to 2. Hardly any time to talk to Mom. I'll call her and let her know you're busy. She nodded. Thanks. I love you, sis. Talk to you later? Her cousin nodded. Her cousin nodded. I love you too. Bye, and good luck. She gave Garnette a hug. She hugged back, and then watched Marion leave. She grabbed the towel and hooked it on a rock that was pointy yet not sharp, and above the water. There, now whenever I need it, Tonight, I'll be able to tug on it, and it'll fall. No, I'll just leave that in. She grabbed the bucket her cousin left for her, went back in the water, and entered the waterlogged cave. She lied down and closed her eyes to rest. It didn't take long for Ezra to arrive. He peeked in and saw her resting. He raised a brow. "Hello, Miss Garnette?" She got up from resting her eyes before looking at him.
Hello, Mr. Ewell.
He smiled faintly. "You have news for me?" Garnette nodded. "Good, and I have news for you." Her brows rose with interest. "Before I came, I thought to ask His Majesty if he remembered the merperson who disappeared during the storm." Her eyes widened. "Did he remember?" Ezra shook his head. "Just barely, ma'am. It was quite a few decades after he became king. He remembers being upset about it." Garnette's shoulders slumped, but she gave him an interesting look.
Does he remember what the person looked like?
"I tried asking that. He barely remembers anything, but he does remember being disappointed when he found her. All he can remember is finding her at the surface and using his trident. In fact, it was one of the storms that had a ship." Her eyes were wide.
Oh my word! I really am related to a mermaid,
She thought to herself.
That's the same nightmare Mom had when she was a girl.
"Now let's get to business. I'd like to find this mermaid before the day is over." She nodded. Then, of course, she hesitated.
Before I start, I want to tell you something about myself.
He nodded as she sighed.
This is a bit nerve-wracking for me. Just recently I discovered more about my family.
She paused for a moment.
Up until a few days ago, I thought I was raised by my mom. It turns out she's my aunt. I never knew my mother because she died soon after I was born. My aunt explained that my mother and I had several things in common. But when she was just a girl, she kept having the same nightmare. A lot like the king's memory of that storm.
Ezra narrowed his brows in confusion.
The thing is, my aunt said she died of committing suicide, but she has a hard time believing that. In fact, other family members thought it was suspicious. I'm actually waiting for my aunt's call. She's contacting them about my mother's suicide.
"I am confused. You're a mermaid, but you don't believe it?"
That's part of it. I was raised by my aunt on land. I didn't become a mermaid until 2 days ago.
She responded, nervously playing with her fingers. Ezra raised his brows.
I'm the mermaid you're looking for.
She smiled faintly. His mouth dropped. "Wow. You didn't know until... Wow." It stayed quiet for a long time. Ezra sighed and shook his head in amazement. "Well, now that everything is cleared, I think it might be time to visit someone." Garnette narrowed her brows in confusion.
What do you mean?
"Well, you know you're part of the merfolk world, both present and past. Since I found one of the missing mermaids, or should I say descendant of one, there is someone who wants to talk to you. Two someones, actually. One of them is a psychic, and the other is the king himself." She looked at him in bewilderment.
I have to talk to the king?
She asked, as blood drained from her face. "Yes." He nodded and waved his hand, beckoning her. "Come along." She just looked at him.
Garnette had no idea what to do while she glanced around. She then gasped. "Wait, may I call my aunt real quick? My cousin told her to wait to call me, but I don't want her waiting all afternoon and night."
Ezra held back a giggle and smiled softly. "As you wish, Miss Garnette." She picked up one of the shells and spoke into it.
"Aunt Kaylee, are you there?"
At the same time, Miss Tarleton was lying down on her hotel bed. She was trying to figure out how long to wait. She tried waiting when Garnette and Mr. Ewald met. She ended up making herself occupied, but that didn't take long. Eventually, the shell on her nightstand vibrated and bubbled. Kaylee heard that and turned toward the shell. She quickly picked it up.
"Garnette, is that you?"
"Hey, Mom," she said instinctively.
"How are you? Did your search end positive?"
Her aunt smiled. "Just barely, Nettie." She winced. "You did a good job suggesting on what to do if they got suspicious. A few hung up, some were quiet and then hung up, but only 2 were able to make sense of anything."
"Really? What did they say?"
She asked, a bit intrigued. "Well, one aunt said not to worry, as long as I don't let you swim in the ocean more than 3 or 4 times. Garnette made a face. "The other relative, well, he all but nearly hung up. He said that I need to be careful. If anything were to happen, I would have to make sure you were away from water or the ocean before the first second of sunset." She sighed. "It's starting to make sense. I just don't know what to do." She paused. "Did you learn anything from your meeting?"
"I learned plenty, Aunt Kaylee. It turns out there were only 2 merpeople who disappeared, one of which was during a storm. But that happened over 100 years ago. Get this, though. Mr. Ewald told me that the king saw the mermaid during the storm. The way he described the king's memory, it sounds just like the nightmare."
Kaylee was shocked. "The king?" She paused and shook her head out of thought. "Mr. Ewald? Who's he?"
"Ezra Ewald. He's the merman I told you and Marion about."
She looked at him. Ezra nodded knowingly.
"Ma, Aunt Kaylee, I have to go. Mr. Ewald is taking me to meet someone, and the king. Tell Marion what happened. I'll talk to you later. I love you."
Garnette put down the shell. She hesitated and grabbed the bucket, putting the shell in there, and looked at Mr. Ewald.
"I'm ready."
"Are you sure you want to take the bucket and your shell?" She bit her lip.
"Not entirely, but I'd like to take it in case Aunt Kaylee or my cousin calls me."
He nodded. "Very well then. Let's be off." He started swimming away. She swam along with him. Garnette paused a moment to look back at Virginia Beach.
"I feel bad about this. I don't want to be torn away. But I have to find out who else I could be related to,"
she thought to herself. She hurried to catch up with the king's advisor.
"I might feel comfortable enough down there to live with them."
After time passed, she and Ezra were only 2 miles away. Garnette gasped at the sight of the underwater city. It was beautiful. Almost everything appeared to be shining. Many colors blended in with the anemones and fish. Blue, purple, green, or pink. As they entered, everyone was welcoming Mr. Ewald. Half of them narrowed their brows with the sight of a mermaid they weren't familiar with, but they continued their affairs.
"Wow,"
Garnette whispered. He looked at her and saw an awestruck look upon her face. "Welcome to Aquatica." And that's where I'm going to stop. Oh my gosh. Incredible. Incredible. And I think that's a perfect way to end the video. So, I hope you are enjoying this book as much as I am. Oh my gosh, I'm loving it. And the next time you'll be seeing me is in part 9. Or maybe a karaoke. Who knows? I'm feeling spontaneous. I hope you all have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. This is the Esperanza 243, signing out. Bye!